Hey, everybody. Well, hi. Hey, everyone. I hope everybody is doing well. For those of you who are watching this live, thank you so much for joining. For those of you who are watching this as a replay, thank you for watching. So, I don't know. So it's Sunday. It's January the 15th. So we're basically halfway through this month already, which I find hard to believe. I don't know if it's just me, but it sort of felt like Christmas was really not that long ago, but then it really was that long ago. You know, Maybe it's just because I'm content in my life. And because I feel content with my life, it doesn't seem like the month is dragging on. Usually January would feel like the longest month on record, and yet it doesn't seem that way. So I'm so excited. Basically, I finally have lost the desire to drink coffee. Now, okay, let me just say this. It, that may not seem like a huge deal, okay? Um, and for some people it's not, but it definitely was an addiction for me. And as many times as I have tried to um, cut back or switch to decaf or cut out coffee completely, I never could. I constantly felt horrible. I was always exhausted. I had to drink more and more of it. And I knew that it was horrible for me. Never mind what it might be doing to my microbiome, no matter what it might be doing to my body as far as leading to dehydration, as far as, affecting my skin, my teeth. Outside of that, it's really bad because I have an irritated bladder. I have an easily irritated bladder. And caffeine is one of those things that if you drink it, it will make you want to go to the bathroom, right? So the fact that I should have either cut it way back or cut it out completely didn't matter because my whole thing was I don't care if I get a bit bloated. I don't care if I get a bit gassy. This is my thing. It's my last thing. It's zero carb. Therefore, I'm going to keep drinking it because I like the taste. And don't get me wrong, when it's a really good cup of coffee, like a nice Brazilian roast or a really nice single origin from somewhere in South America or from Africa maybe, I can enjoy a cup. But I've been finding over the last few weeks that I was instead of sticking to like one or two, I was easily drinking 3 or 4 cups of coffee, and it was making me nauseous. It was making me feel like crampy and bloated and all sorts of other stuff like that. And here I was thinking to myself, now, why don't I just try to quit? Because if I was to do that, if I could actually quit, um, then I would probably feel better. But I didn't think I could because I had tried to give it up before. I mean, other than during my pregnancies with both my sons, I didn't drink coffee. But I tell you what, by the about month number 8 or 9, when the doctor said, yeah, you can have a little coffee. Oh boy, did I ever look forward to it. Coffee every single day. And the other thing I noticed is that almost every single day, that was my reason to get out of the house. I'm going to go sit somewhere and have a cup of coffee. I could easily go to, Costa or Starbucks or Cafe Nero or any of these other places, and I could get water, I could get a cup of tea. But I thought, well, why would I do that? I like coffee. I'm going to have coffee. And so it was that whole thinking, that whole mentality of, but I like it and I don't think I can ever give it up because I like it and I want to like it and I don't want to have to give it up. And and yet here I was praying to God to take away my desire for coffee. And it wasn't so much the coffee, it was the caffeine. But even I know, and this is the crazy thing, right? And I guess you can apply this to any addiction, whether it's sugar, whether it's processed foods, whether it's carbs of any kind, nuts or seeds, or whatever your poison is, and whatever the dosage is that makes it that way. Here's what I've come to realize is we can justify anything. We can always find a reason to justify it, right? So for me, for a long, long time, like I've shared in my other videos and as I've shared in my other lives, is that for the longest time, now, okay, sorry, let me start back again. I did not know that eating animal meat, that is fatty sources of animal meat or animal meat that comes with fat included. So fatty cuts of lamb or fattier cuts of beef, whether it's minced, whether it's cubed, whether it's cut in a steak form. Those are things those are the easy examples, or bison or buffalo, if you can find them, whether it's antelope or deer, whatever it might be. Any animal that is a ruminant, whether it is, you know, farm raised or you catch it in the wild because you're or a hunter gatherer, like in Africa. I had no idea that these were the things that were good for me because we'd all been fed a whole bunch load of lies about what was considered healthy. And that was from the food guide. Now, I might be wrong on this, but I believe the food guides were created by the US first, and that was based on recommendations that were made by I think it's the Department of Nutrition. Basically, it was guys like, Mr. Kellogg of Kellogg cereals, along with the Seventh Day Adventists and the people that were in power at the time, and formed the made the recommendations that would later form the American food guide, dietary food guide. And of course, now I'm Canadian, but Canada mirrors or mimics a lot of what the US has done over history, certainly with things like that. So I know they've got a more modified one now that would say apply to the Inuit people who cannot easily get fresh fruit and vegetables, and therefore are advised to eat, if they can, frozen or tinned, neither of which obviously I recommend. But needless to say, it was not just in North America or in the Southern Americas or Central America. It was not just in the Americas or in Europe, Northern, Eastern, Southern, Western. All of these areas have some sort of food guide, right? Which recommends loads and loads and loads of fruit and vegetables, loads and loads and loads of grains, seeds, legumes, pulses, poultry, some pork, right? So basically meat and alternatives, but the meat primarily is recommended as being the white meats and not red meats. And meanwhile, eating those things, cutting out butter, eating margarine, all that madness, turns out was completely wrong and was based on the fact that the recommendations made by the Seventh-day Adventists, who had an interest in promoting a vegetarian lifestyle, and also those members those professors from Harvard, who would also help form the American Heart Association, took bribes to lie and say that, in fact, what they discovered was not right, which was this, that in fact, sugar, which was the cause of a leading cause of heart disease, was not a problem, but it was in fact fatty meats meaning mainly the red meat animals or the ruminant meats, the meat of ruminant animals and its associated fats, which were healthy, were in fact the problem. And so we've all been duped, right? So, why do I share all that? Because for me, um, coming like all of us have, especially of my generation, I'm 50. So those of us born in 72 or thereabouts, we were raised on margarine and processed seed oils and, like Crisco, like all that. It's horrible. I mean, when I looked and found out how margarine was actually developed, it's disgusting. It is so gross. Basically, um, the cottonseed, which cottonseed and oils, out of this that was created in the states to light the lamps. They had all this stuff left over, and someone said, "Well, hey, why don't we turn it into something that humans can eat?" So the fuel that was used to light lamps was then turned into something we were told was okay to eat, which is holy smokes, that's so gross. And we didn't know any better. So here I was, okay, um, always knowing that as much as I had at one point loved the taste of coffee, I came to realize it wasn't really the coffee that I loved. It was the fact of having the foamed milk of a cappuccino. That was what made the coffee taste nice. Or back when I was drinking them, pumpkin spice lattes. So it was the flavor shots, it was the sugary added stuff. Or even if it was made with sweetener, it was the sweetener and the flavorings that I was enjoying, not the actual coffee. I could drink it black. And there was a point not that long ago where I could drink cup after cup of black coffee and not even notice the taste. But at that point, like, I don't know, it just felt like, you get that horrible, if you're a coffee drinker, you get that coffee aftertaste in your mouth. And I came to realize that I something had to change. Like something had to change because I was getting horrible headaches. I was feeling nauseated. I felt like I would feel dizzy. And the only thing that was a difference in my life, especially recently, was the fact that I was still drinking coffee. Now, this is just me, okay? This is just me. I should not be drinking caffeine because it narrows it can I think what do they say? It constricts the blood vessels. So for someone like myself who has Raynaud's syndrome, which is a condition where it is mine is secondary. So mine is triggered by anxiety or stress. And what happens is if I let myself get to the point of being overly anxious or highly stressed, the cortisol dumps, of course, like all of us, my cortisol dumps to hang on to whatever fats on my body because it thinks I'm like, hey, I'm being chased by a bear, or it thinks, oh, wow, something horrible is about to happen. Like someone's going to go after you with an axe and you got to run away and escape. Okay. I'm not in those situations, but our bodies don't know any different. Right. So that's a simplified version of what I understand happens. What I understand happens when we hit that fight or flight mode. Now, if you want to know the science behind it, I highly recommend that you go to Bart Kay's channel. He is all about the science. He's all about debunking people who have no clue what they're talking about. He's funny. He's extremely intelligent, and he could absolutely break it down for you like scientifically. I'm just telling you, this is like to summarize what I understand about the process. Okay, and so that's happening. So when the cortisol is being dumped, and my brain is yelling at my body, hang on to all the fat. We're probably going to be in a horrible situation. We're going to be starved if we're not careful. Hang on to the fat because we're going to need to feed ourselves. We need energy, right? So that's happening. On the same hand, what's happening is, for whatever reason, my brain tells my fingers and my toes to either be colder than they should be or hotter than they should be. So what happens with me is it could be 23 degrees Celsius, which is a nice pleasant day, right? And I could be sitting out in the sun, but at that time, for whatever reason, my fingers, my fingertips, and my toes could suddenly get cold. My brain is telling those parts of my body, yeah, we don't need so much blood flow there. Slow down. And those extremities suddenly go cold. Not because of any real reason. Like it's not because it's actually cold out. It's not. It's not at all. It's actually quite nice out. But like even right now, sitting in the office, okay, I don't know, it's about 18 degrees in the house, which is quite comfortable. And I'm sitting, I took my heavy sweater off, so it's not like it's cold in the house. I'm actually quite warm. And with the screen up behind me, so you don't see our vacuum and our steam cleaner and all the other whatever junk is behind me because the office needs to be sorted. The maid is off sick, I think. I don't know. But it's warm in this where I'm sitting in the office is quite warm and toasty, but my toes actually are really cold, and I have thick wool socks on and slippers, and my toes are still cold. Don't know why. I think maybe part of it is just because I love going live and I love sharing what's happening with you guys. And I love, that you guys are checking in and you guys are liking what I'm doing. It's amazing. But there's that part of me that always feels for that moment to start with of who am I? Like I'm nobody. Why would anybody care about me? Why would anybody want to hear what I have to say? Like it's ridiculous. That's me. Okay, but I think that's probably enough, that lie in my head. I've learned how to overcome it and pray through it and not hang on to it, but it still pops in my head, right? So when that's running through my brain, it automatically sends just enough anxiety or stress through my body. My brain goes, oh, something's going to happen. Oh no, panic, start the cortisol and tell the fingers and toes, it's all good. It's all good. Don't worry about it. It's too hot. She's overheating. She's feeling stressed. Slow down. On the same hand, sometimes in the summertime, it could be maybe 25 or 26 degrees. Let me put it the other way around. There are times where I've sat out in the sun and I've had to peel off socks and shoes because my feet felt like they were sweating and my toes and fingertips would go red. That doesn't happen as often. More than usually, what actually happens is they get cold. And that always happens when I have any sort of anxiety or stress or something like that going on. So I hope you guys will stay in the stream with me. And then I won't feel so much stress or anxiety and it'll be great. But so right now, I don't know how many of you have ever experienced this. I know there are some of you as far away as the Midwest of the US and also places like Sweden. So you guys know winter and you guys know cold. So which is awesome, right? So when I say, so you guys know that, you know what it's like, when you're out and even if you have on thick socks and boots, when it's a cold day, your toes get cold first. And you do know what I'm talking about because you guys are probably having that right now. I personally do not miss that at all about Canada. My son, who is 19, has moved back to Canada. So we've been here 13 years in England. We moved here when he was 6, and he spent last summer working as a chef for a resort that his older cousin manages. And he came back briefly between end of October, beginning of December. And he's already decided, this is his passion and his calling, and he's moved back there permanently. For now, anyways, as far as we know. But because we still have our citizenship. So anyhow, he has moved back there. And so here's a guy who literally has not seen winter and snow and had cold toes or fingers since he was a little kid. And it's a bit of a shock to his system. Now, luckily, when my husband went to go see him back in September, we made sure he was sorted with proper coat and hat and gloves and boots and all of that sort of thing. But I guess my point is so that's what happens to me with my Raynaud's. Now, what I came to understand was that Raynaud's sometimes can be a symptom of other things. And it wasn't until I had seen multiple doctors and multiple rheumatologists and gone through multiple testing and had multiple blood work drawn over the course of at least a year, a little bit more than a year, from the time I injured my back in March of 2014, up until I was finally diagnosed with fibromyalgia in December of 2015. And basically what came to be clear was that Raynaud's and fibromyalgia are also symptoms of an underactive thyroid. Now, why do I share that? Well, because it's true, but also drinking caffeinated beverages, really bad idea, because it affects your blood flow and your circulation. I'm sorry, not your blood flow, because if my blood stopped flowing, I'd be dead. So that would be an interesting a live stream with someone who was dead. Why not? Like, it'd be like a whole weekend at Bernie's kind of thing. So, but I was determined because I was so depressed. I was so depressed. I was so depressed. I know I'm repeating myself, but I was so depressed when I was finally told I had fibromyalgia. For one thing, it took them over a year to diagnose me. And it's because it's a diagnosis of elimination. And, in some ways, I was really lucky because, to be honest with you, the wait times here for the people, I know people complain about the wait times for the NHS, but honestly, they're way quicker than anything I would have been able to get back in Canada. Okay, so I'm truly blessed for that. But the problem was until I had an actual diagnosis, I didn't know what to do or how to proceed. So, and for those of you who have been there, you know what I mean. And it's frustrating, right? There are some things that we can deal with that we don't need a formal diagnosis. But there are some things we do. Like my son who's 22, has autism. He's high functioning. He's pretty independent. He is in the process of looking for work and wants to get his own place at some point. It's all great. Okay. But we had to wait till he was 7 for him to be assessed in Canada. And so for 7 years, we weren't sure what to tell teachers or support workers because we couldn't say for sure, oh, well, he has autism. Can you try to do this and work with him this way? So it wasn't to put him in a box, but it was to make sure he got the right support. And the thing is it's that whole, we have to know, at least for me, I got to know what I'm dealing with, because if I don't know what I'm dealing with, how am I going to deal with it? Right? For me, until I was really, really willing to not only admit and accept that I have anxiety and depression, that I have food addictions, that I have coffee addiction. That now, and other people have other addictions. But until I could actually say, yes, I have these things, I couldn't find a way to recovery. Because as long as I could figure out an excuse for it, there was no problem. It didn't exist, right? That's kind of like the kid who, the little kid who, if he closes his eyes and he can't see you, then you can't see him. And obviously that doesn't work, you know. And it kind of ties in with, for a very long time, um, I didn't want to follow whatever God's plan was. I was going to do it all myself, figure it all out on my own. I had a better way and a better plan. And clearly it didn't work because it took me until now to get to this point. Now, I believe I had to go through everything in the past in order to get me to the point I'm at now. And that's in accepting and being willing and ready to deal with my different food challenges and addictions. There are so many people who can enjoy coffee, um, or not have. They can have it or not have it. They can have maybe a cup, maybe two a day, and that's it. They're fine. They don't need to have it all the time. My husband is that way. And so you know what? One coffee, maybe two, no problem. Go for it. Absolutely. But I know for me it was a problem. And I wanted to share about this because I know it seems like I'm rambling and I'm starting here and going there. And I get that. I kind of do that and I apologize. But it wasn't until just recently when I finally felt like that call of caffeine was not gripping me. And I used to joke and say, well, yeah, I'm addicted to coffee, but that's all right. It's not hard drugs. It's not alcohol. It's not gambling or porn or whatever. That's fine. And you know what? Maybe in comparison, that's true. But then I had to remind myself that I was spending any spare money I had on buying coffee. That was my reason to get out. It wasn't to, you know what? I want to go sit at the library and read, just for change of scenery. Or it wasn't, hey, maybe I can go take some pictures down at the castle, or maybe film some content, or go live in town center and put that up on my space and show people where I live. None of that was a thing. It was, I want to get out. I'm going to have coffee. I'm going to just sit and keep to myself. And for me, that was becoming a problem because I was so needing to have the coffee. It wasn't just that I felt like I wouldn't, it wasn't like my husband saying occasionally, hey, let's go get a coffee at Starbucks. Let's go out together. We'll have a coffee. We'll grab some time, or I'll do some work if you want to join me. It wasn't that. It was, I have to get out to get coffee. Now we have coffee in our house. We have instant coffee in our house. Um, if you're in the UK, you're familiar with that as being what most people have. I know in Canada, um, instant coffee wasn't that I knew was not that awesome. Didn't taste that great. And so it was all about, you buy your big tin of Tim Hortons ground coffee and you made it at home if you didn't want to go to Tim Hortons every day. Or you might go to Starbucks, but more people would go to Tim. More people I knew went to Tim's, right? Or it was maybe an independent cafe, or somewhere you would, if you were like my dad, he would order in his own raw coffee beans and he would roast them himself and grind them and then use his espresso machine. He was a bit of an exception. Most people don't go through that whole process, right? You kind of want to have, turn on the kettle, add some instant coffee, pour in the water, add milk if you have it, probably sugar, maybe sweetener, and that's it. You're good. And then that would become one cup in the morning, or two or three or four. For me, I knew it was bad for me. It was horrible for me because one of the first things they tell you if you have fibromyalgia or Raynaud's or arthritis of any kind, and I have osteoarthritis in my wrists, in my fingers, in my toes, um, they say you should either fully cut out or at the very least reduce significantly your coffee intake because caffeine makes those things worse. And I didn't do that. I told myself it was because, no, well, I like the taste, I'll be fine. It doesn't really affect me. And secretly, the other reason was because at the worst, at the worst, I've had several horrible times throughout my experience with being a bulimic. And with bulimia, I mean, I started into the patterns of bulimia when I was 13. When I basically, I started puberty when I was 11, but by the time I was 13, I was already trying to figure out ways that I could skip meals or, you know, go without eating and without having my mom watch me like a hawk. And, I wasn't necessarily, I hadn't figured out how to really purge that well, but I was counting calories and trying to find ways to not, to cut back on my food. And sometimes that worked. It might only work for a few days, and then I'd get hungry and I'd binge and I'd feel terrible. But that was where my bad relationship with food started when I was 13, and I was not able to stop until I was 48, which is the time that I became a carnivore. So it's interesting to me, how all of this ties together because throughout the whole process, the one thing I refused to stop consuming at all was coffee. I refused. It didn't matter if it got me through those sleepless nights when my sons were babies. Didn't matter if it helped me because I was up because one of them was sick or both of them were sick and I needed instant energy. Because there's a point where at least I found if you drink enough coffee, it stops affecting you. It doesn't have any effect on your ability to find energy. And so for me, it didn't matter. But what I did find, what I figured out really, really young was that caffeine is an amazing appetite suppressant. Fantastic. Totally amazing. And so for me, when I was just after my first son was born, he was extremely ill as a baby. He had multiple upper respiratory infections. He developed bronchial asthma when he was 2 months old. He spent 10 days in hospital. And I was a complete emotional wreck as a new mom, not knowing what to do about that, of course. And so, what I figured out even before that was caffeine will suppress your appetite. So, coffee's bad, okay? Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi and anything diet that's got caffeine in it is way worse. I knew that sugar had more calories. So even though I didn't know why it was bad as far as metabolically speaking when I was in my teens, my day, I'll walk you through a day of my life. Let's say when I was 18 and I started my last year of high school. I had been working as a camp counselor the summer just before that. And I was binging and purging by that time. And somebody heard me in the bathroom and somebody thought I had caught this flu bug that was going around the camp at the time. And I was taken to see the nurse and I had to share with her, actually, no, I've been making myself throw up because I'm trying to get skinny. And they took me to see a doctor in the nearby village. And then my parents I had to call my parents who were up at the summer house at the cottage a couple hours away. They had to leave their vacation, come collect me and take me back home because I had to share that I had an eating disorder. And even then, I didn't want to say that I was bulimic because the glamorous thing to be at that time was anorexic. Karen Carpenter, world famous singer, was anorexic. And of course, some of the big top models looked like they were anorexic. And I felt like I couldn't even do that right because I liked my food too much. I loved my food. So um, I didn't want my parents to be on my case. I didn't want to have to talk about it. Talk about awkward, having to talk about all of your feelings with your mom and dad. Like my mom, maybe, but not something you can easily talk to a dad about if you're a girl, right? And it was really hard for me to try to explain it to my mom because she's petite and she's about 5'2", I think, 5'1", 5'2", and she's always been very, very tiny, very slim. And that was not me. I always felt compared to my mom and my sister like a giant. Now I'm only 5'5", which is pretty average, but they were always again very petite, very slender, and I never saw myself that way. Even when I never saw myself that way. So it was agreed. I had to see a nutritionist, which I did begrudgingly. Um, I think she said, got to eat a little bit of cheese, make sure you eat a little bit of yogurt. I don't know if you like tea and coffee, but that's probably going to help you. Eat a little bit of everything. And so for me, what I did at that point was like, I got to find a way to just not eat during the day. And so I made sure I would get up first thing in the morning. I didn't even really I loved the smell, but I wasn't a huge fan of coffee. But I figured, well, if I start drinking it, because I don't know, I think I read it in a magazine or one of the other girls that was a counselor with me had said, oh well, things like coffee and tea, like caffeine, it'll keep you from feeling hungry. I saw it or heard it somewhere. And so I tried to like coffee at that point, but really I only liked it if it was mostly sugar and a lot of milk. So as long as it didn't actually taste like coffee, it was great, right? But it had that desired effect. And so for me, I had to figure out ways to try my best to control my appetite. And so I started drinking Diet Coke or Diet Cola, whatever the brand was. And it was magic because all of a sudden, oh my goodness. I mean, I was thirsty as no one's business because that caffeine will do that to you. But holy smokes, I wasn't hungry. And so if I had to eat a little something at home at dinner time because we all ate as a family, that's all right. I would just drink Diet Cola during the day, and then I wasn't all that hungry. Also, I used to chew on chewing gum a lot. Like I could make a piece of chewing gum last up to 4 hours just to give my mouth something to do, and that would take my mind off that I was hungry, even though my stomach was rumbling and growling. Now, of course, what I didn't realize at the time was all of that was producing all this gas in my belly. And so I was getting bloated. I thought I wasn't doing it right. I thought I had to, restrict even more and then all the belly would go away. I thought it was me instantly becoming fat because I didn't know. I didn't know. Nobody knew. And that's what I did. So when I was in high school, any sort of babysitting money or allowance I made or anything I got from a part-time job, a good chunk of that I used and I bought myself Diet Cokes at school. And I would easily have 4 or 5 in a day. Most of them I would cram into 2 hours at lunch break. And so it wasn't even the fact it was coffee, but I felt like, oh my gosh, I have this magical power, this magical insight, which was if I have something with caffeine, I'm not hungry. This is great. Of course, not realizing it was already starting to destroy the enamel on my teeth. It was already causing horrible damage to my gut and to my intestine because I had no idea. And my mentality at the time was I didn't care what it took as long as fill in the blank if you have struggled with eating disorders. I was X size, right? That's all I wanted. And of course, I didn't know God at the time. I wasn't a Christian. So forward to university, and in my first year, I was still drinking lots of Diet Coke and Diet Cola. But at the end of the summer, I had worked part-time in a cafe, and I actually had learned how to enjoy the taste of coffee. And again, with a lot of sugar and milk, but I realized, wait a minute, I can get coffee at home anytime. I can buy coffee whenever, and also I can get free coffee at my job. And so, wow, this is great. I have energy. I'm never hungry. I'm going to totally, lose weight, and it's going to be amazing. And maybe I did. I might have lost 5 pounds over a month and a half. But what really was the downfall for me was at that point, I couldn't stop. Even though my metabolism had stopped, my metabolism was no longer burning anything. It was like I was just keeping myself in this permanent status, and I needed to drink more and more coffee, right? Sounds familiar, right? It's kind of like you get used to eating, say, processed food or carbs and sugar, and that first bite or that first piece of whatever it is amazing. And in order to get the same dopamine hit, you got to have more and more and more of it, which is how you get people. I saw something on YouTube. There was a young woman, I think from South Carolina somewhere, and she was showing how she drinks her Pepsi, like regular Pepsi, not diet, regular Pepsi, and then she pours in like 4 tablespoons of sugar with it. Yeah. She's like, how many spoonfuls of sugar do you take in your Pepsi? And my thought was, gross, none. But the thing is, honestly, I was doing almost the exact same thing, but with food and with coffee. And even when I started to cut back or try to change things up to try to ease my IBS, the one thing I would not give up was coffee. And I came to sort of think of it like this. If I cannot just say, yeah, I don't feel like it, or nah, I don't want it. If I can't say that about something I'm putting in my mouth, then that's a problem, regardless of what it is. And I realized very quickly that that's what I had to do with, like I said, with processed foods, with all the seed oils and the junk food and the carbs and the crap, all of that stuff. I knew I had to cut out. And some of it I was able to cut out right away, no issue at that point. But a lot of it I had to work my way up to. And that was because I realized, wow, I had no idea that it was an addiction for me, right? And how many of us are like that, where we think, oh yeah, I can stop eating that, until we try. And then that's usually when we go, oh yeah, I guess that's an addiction, which is, you know what? Honestly, that's why I've faced every other diet except for a carnivorous way of eating as something awful and impossible and doomed to failure. You know, Garfield the cat refers to a diet as die with the letter T at the end. And I laugh about it. But if we think about it, anything else that most of us have tried, whether it was Jenny Craig or Nutrisystem, Slim Fast, whether you're doing replacement meals, whether you're, eating only fish and lettuce, or you're only having cabbage and pineapple, or you're having soup every day, or whatever it is, whatever crazy thing is out there, whatever fad is out there, it is always doomed to fail because we take out everything, including all the good stuff we should be eating. And I don't know, I would look at January every year as, okay, I got to lose weight. I start today. No desserts. And then of course, I don't find something to replace it with. So within a few days, it's like, oh, but if I give myself a cheat day, fantastic. And then the one cheat day becomes a second cheat day, becomes a week, becomes a month. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not really dieting anymore. I guess I fell off the wagon on my diet, you know. Um, Especially when I was eating carbs and processed crap because I was addicted. And there was that part of me that honestly, I really didn't want to stop eating. It either had to be I needed something to take my appetite away. I had to have an appetite suppressant because if I didn't, I had no control. I couldn't control myself. And there is no suppressant for coffee. I have spent much time praying and wishing that I didn't have this feeling of, I got to drink coffee. I got it. I need it to stay awake. Now, part of it is the fact that our dogs, well, our one dog is fine. Our greyhound that we have, we've rehomed him. He was a racer. He's just 3. He's just off the track a couple of months back. He wasn't able to race any longer. His owner, his original owner, who's lovely, 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 and treated him so well, wanted to find a good home for him. But of course, he was used to a kennel life and to training for races. So as he's getting used to this whole relaxation life that he's now got with us, he's been relaxing his sleeping patterns. But initially, I was getting up at 4:30 every morning because that's when he was getting fed, and then I would be up in the middle of the night to let both our dogs out. So that wasn't helpful. And I would say, well, I'll just stay up instead of letting them go back to sleep and then trying to sleep myself. I was forcing myself to stay awake when I didn't have to with coffee. And by the time everyone else in the house was awake, I was usually on my third cup of coffee, and that was before 10 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't have any more energy. Middle of the afternoon, I'd find that I drifted off asleep on the sofa, and that would affect being able to sleep at night, and it would just keep going. And I realized that I had to give up coffee, but I couldn't do it by myself. I couldn't. I could not do it by myself. And the crazy thing, what I find is crazy, is maybe my body is finally ready to get it out of my system because I have found in the last few days that coffee has tasted absolutely horrible to me. I don't want it. Um, I don't know why that's happened. I watched one of Bart Kay's videos from the beginning of the year where because he is doing a 90-day carnivore challenge, he has quit coffee and all plants, because he would eat occasionally blueberries and maybe something else, but he's given up any alcohol, any caffeine, and he's given up plants for this 90-day challenge. And I thought, I would love to do that because I know I would feel better and sharper and clear minded. But how do I do that? Like, I can't give up coffee. I can't. And when I stopped and realized, well, wait a minute, that's because I'm trying to do it on my own willpower. Oh, that's the problem. I can't do it by my own willpower. Of course I can't, because I'm addicted. I might want to quit for all the intentions of the world, and yet I can't do it by myself. I've tried. I even tried late last year. I thought, yeah, you know what? I'm going to try to give up coffee because I'm probably going to feel better. So I know what I'll do. I'll ease myself off of it. And you know what? For some people, they can. It didn't work for me because what I found I was doing was instead of maybe taking a week to go from fully caffeinated to half and half, and then more half and half, and then 3/4 decaf, and then full decaf, and then easing off. Instead of doing it like that, what I found was that I just wasn't. I was trying to do half and half for too long. I was trying to do it for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and for me, when I was stretching it out like that, it just made it way too tempting of, well, if I ask them for a latte to make it half and half, it's going to be too much hassle. I'll just drink it as regular coffee. Besides, I feel great and I don't have to eat and I'm all this, and that was part of the other issue as well, was that I found even after eating carnivorous, this Genesis diet, even after doing it for 2.5 years, I was finding that suddenly I wasn't really recognizing my hunger cues. And I would say, well, I'm not really hungry, but I guess I should grab something, because if I'm hungry in 20 minutes, what if I don't want to get up and make anything? And I've done that a few times. And now it didn't affect my weight in any way, but I felt overfull afterwards. And I realized it's because the caffeine was not letting me feel my hunger when I was actually hungry. And it was delaying my eating, which was delaying my metabolism, which was delaying when my circadian rhythm would start and when I would be winding down for the evening. And it would keep me up later at night. And it would affect my sleep patterns. It would affect how I could feel awake and alert the next day, even if I had to get up and let my two pain in the butt dogs out, right? Actually, they're not really pains in the butt. They're lovely, lovely dogs. But it was affecting everything. And that last little bit of healing, as far as, easing even more pain, as easing the arthritis, easing the fibromyalgia, just making everything just a little bit better. Getting rid of those headaches. I was so afraid of having withdrawal headaches that I didn't even really try to stop. I was so afraid and so worried about, I'm going to be so exhausted, I don't want to be tired, that I didn't even start. And then last week I had a few days in a row where I was having 4, almost 5 cups of coffee, which for some people is pretty average, but for me is too much. And I knew it was too much. It was part of me, but it was coming out the back end way too quick. And I was feeling like throwing up, and it was awful. And yet I still wasn't willing to say, I need to stop this. It's one of those things where I was being so silly because I had surrendered my eating, my food, my addictions, my bulimia to God. And every day, every single day starts fresh. And so for today, I have quit coffee. Okay. I did manage 1 cup this morning, but it took me over the course of several hours. And I didn't enjoy it. And I wanted to see if it was because of the coffee I got or if it was me. And so I had to go out and get the groceries today before the stores closed. And I went out, and it was amazing. I went out and I grabbed myself a cappuccino to go from Costa, my favorite cappuccino to go as far as the big chains, right? And I took 1 sip and I thought I was going to be sick. Now I did end up okay, so I ended up unfortunately wasting 4 pounds, but I realized no, it isn't the coffee, it's me. I finally have this aversion to coffee. Go on, buddy. Sorry, my dog's getting excited because my son's feeding them right now. I finally had this aversion. Now, in the past, when I felt like this, I've pushed through.
Yeah, what food is good?
Sorry, we're talking about feeding the dogs. And yes, he gets a little bit, just a little, just a spoonful. Thank you, Aiden. About that much. Yeah. Sorry, he's feeding the dogs for me. So for me, I realized, wait a second. If I had actually surrendered to God in the first place, then he probably would have allowed me to feel this aversion a lot sooner. I don't know what tomorrow's going to be like, but as of right now, today, I can't stand the taste of coffee. And I never thought I would say that. And that is such a freeing thing. I don't have any major tricks or anything like that. The only thing I've changed is that sorry, wandering off again. A few days ago, I watched one of Bart Kay's live streams where he had said, this is my second day with no coffee. As I said, yeah, sorry, back to the topic at hand. There was no coffee for 2 days in a row as he was doing this carnivore challenge. And he was, in fact, drinking hot water. And I thought to myself, oh, well, maybe that'll help me because cold water doesn't do anything to me. I mean, it's hydrating, yes, and it's delicious and all that sort of thing and refreshing. But what I mean is just drinking it never took away my taste for coffee. And oh my goodness, I could not believe it. I boiled hot water and put it in my mug. Let it cool just a little, added just a little bit of cold water so I could drink it. And I could not believe how amazing I felt with hot water. Now, you can drink coffee all you want, okay? And I don't think it takes away your carnivore card or your low carb membership or any of that. Not at all, okay? I mean, if you're drinking, again, like over 10 cups a day, probably even more than 4 cups a day, that's probably not good. And that probably will affect you. But other than that, based on if you're eating otherwise, everything you consume is animal-based, whether it be their end products like butter or dairy or like milk and like full-fat milk, cream and cheese, or whether it's something like eggs, that's awesome. And if you enjoy a cup or two of coffee and it is not affecting you, fantastic, amen, enjoy it, right? Enjoy it. Go for it. Although I would say if you're going to do decaf, I would think don't get the instant stuff because that's got way more chemicals. If you can get it from somebody who sells beans independently, whether they're ground already or they can grind them for you, they will usually carry, I think the most common process, but more expensive, is Swiss water process or for decaffeinating the coffee beans. And it has the least amount of chemicals when they do that. But although coffee, so coffee is 0 carb on its own. And I believe it has oxalates. So be careful of that. And maybe that's what's been causing the ongoing skin issues and headaches and things like that all this time, because I've cleaned up my food and I've cleaned up what I put in myself with everything except for the coffee. So we'll see how it goes. But it helped me. I couldn't believe that something that simple, just some hot water, like boil water, pour it in a mug. I don't know, chuck in an ice cube if you have to so you don't burn your tongue, or sip out it slowly. I don't know what about the hot water has made this difference, but I'm thankful because now the taste of coffee is disgusting, gross to me. I know in my head, in my memories of coffee, it will always be delicious, but it made me want to be sick, both yesterday and today. So that is an answered prayer because, hey, if it tastes gross, I'm not going to consume it. And I'm sure my fibromyalgia and my joints and everything else will be very glad that I have it. But, I found it was the same thing with when I started Ketovore and then went into Carnivore, is there was withdrawal when I cut out sugar and gluten and the processed stuff, definitely for about a week. But then when I replaced that, even when I got rid of all the starchy vegetables and then eventually just cut all the fruit and veg out fully, I found I had headaches for about a day or two. But as soon as I was eating only animal products and nothing else, it cleared up. Like I've said before, I mean, my brain fog now is basically does not exist. It's gone. Like it's totally gone. Any sort of memory issues, I think it's just because of the fact I'm getting older and that can happen. But I couldn't believe how amazing I felt literally just drinking hot water. So I don't know. It might help. Stranger things have happened, right? I started to eat bacon and eggs, and wouldn't you know it, anything tasting sweet was disgusting to me. And that was it. I didn't have any desire initially to touch them. Now, when I skipped meals, when I didn't eat, if I didn't eat until about 2 in the afternoon, well, then I was at higher risk of wanting to go out and binge on carbs. But after a few weeks, that went away too. But when I started eating breakfast in the morning with bacon and eggs and beef or sausage, meat and patties or sausages, getting all that fat and some salt in, I was full, I was done, I was ready to go. I did not need anything else till later in the day. And that felt amazing. I didn't have like that, 2 hours later moment of, oh my gosh, I'm hungry. I need something. I need energy. Let me go grab a muffin, or I'm just going to have a donut and coffee with cream and sugar. Like none of that happened. None of that happened. It didn't happen overnight, but I was learning to replace the stuff that was once addictive with other things. And that's the thing that I've really come to see in full practice, which makes sense, I think, regardless of the addiction, is it's not enough to turn away from it. We have to have something else to put there instead. But it has to be something good, because obviously what I found was that when I was first really coming off carbs is that, because at the time I still kept nuts in the diet. Yeah, I know, just horrible thing. But I was stuffing my face with nuts, and I couldn't stop eating mixed nuts. My husband was eating them like trail mix when he would go on really long bike rides, like we're talking 40 miles. He would put a little portion of almonds or mixed nuts and take it with him. Now, of course, I did not know then that nuts were so high in oxalates and anti-nutrients, and of course we do not keep them in the house anymore. But for me, I couldn't stop. So I wasn't eating sugar. I wasn't eating processed carbs and baked goods anymore. And I was avoiding margarine and seed oils. However, I was going to town. I was binging on mixed nuts. And I remember standing at the counter in the kitchen. The bag was open and I was just stuffing handfuls in my mouth, and in my head thinking, I have to stop. Like, this is not good. I know it's not good. Even just a couple weeks into the keto diet, the keto side of it, I was thinking, this is bad. And it's like, God, I can't stop. I cannot stop. God, help me stop. A few more mouthfuls of nuts, fistfuls of nuts in my mouth. And then I stopped. And my husband also was finding that he was not handling nuts like he had thought he could. And so we did not keep them in the house. So that is where I'm like, I know how hard it is to break some addictions. I've never been a smoker, but nicotine, I understand, is just as addictive as caffeine. And both will give you negative results if you do it for long enough. Right? The thing I think maybe people don't realize is just because it isn't something that we consider bad, like alcohol addiction or hard drug addiction, doesn't mean it isn't a problem. It's and someone, my son asked me, so is being addicted to something sinful? And I look at it as, I don't think it's the fact that we are addicted so much that's the sin. It's when we don't get help, when we don't find a higher power, in my case, God. If we just let it go, I think then that's the problem. I do not judge anybody with addiction. It is not as, if we had the power to stop ourselves, we would, but we can't. And those of us who have one addiction will generally be able to easily get addicted to other things. And so for me, when I gave up sugar and baked goods, and especially when I started to lose all the weight that I had, so like I've said before, by the end of May of 2020, I was about 200 pounds. And by the end of October, I was down to about 100 and I think 35, just by cutting stuff out. And then I lost another 15 pounds over the next several months. But in total, by early 2021, I was down to 120 pounds, which is where I've been now for the last 2 years. And I share that because when I gave up processed crap and starches and sugary treats and all of that, I kept the coffee because I figured, nope, I have the right to keep one vice and it's only coffee. So screw that. I'm not giving it up. But also, what I found was that my addiction then became, I need to spend money. I was out daily. My husband's like, oh, what are you getting? Oh, I don't know. I'm just looking. I'm just window shopping. I hit all the different charity shops and buy all kinds of stuff that I didn't need. That in the end, it turned out I didn't even really want, but I felt like I had to spend money all the time. That was my next addiction, was shopping, spending money on things I did not need. And I'm finally, on top of that, and I don't. But because I was realizing, you know what, I don't need any more clothes. I got more than enough. I've got everything I need for every season. I'm okay unless, stuff gets shredded or worn out or whatever, the undergarments and things like that. Other than that, I do not feel the pull of having to go to every shop and buy stuff, which is great for our budget. That's amazing. But the one thing that stayed constant was, but I'm not giving up coffee. I'll give up shopping, I'll give up all these bad foods and fake foods, but I'm not giving up my coffee because I like it and that's my thing and that's what I'm going to do. And it's, for me, I don't know. That is sort of like what other addicts would call the addictive brain, right? So we can give up one thing, but we could easily find something else to replace it with. Now, for me, the one thing I'm finding, the one good thing that I'm finding that I'm happy to be addicted to is my walk with God. I love getting up early with the dogs. They usually let me sleep until about 6, which may not seem like much to you guys, but I don't mind. I'm up. I've been able to adjust my circadian clock so that that's plenty of rest for me. And I get up with them and, they get fed, they get let out, then they'll go lie down. And that would be the time where I get to be up and I get to have the house quiet. So it's almost like it's all to myself. And I get to spend all kinds of time praying and listening to worship music or music, that I think would be worshipful to God. And I get to pray and I get to meditate or write in my journal, which is what I do a lot of because it keeps me from being like this with my thoughts all over. But I get to spend all this amazing time with God. And in spite of that, my mind was still, yeah, but coffee's still my thing. It's my last thing. And I realized I was just making up excuses One, to not let myself have let go completely, right? I felt so much better a couple days ago when I drank some hot water. I had a coffee at around lunchtime, tried a few sips later in the day, and it just made me feel sick. So I thought, oh, Bart said he was drinking hot water. All right, I'll boil some hot water. Sat down and started watching some figure skating clips on YouTube. I've never been a figure skater. I love it though. Anyways, point being, as I drank the hot water, I don't know why, but it was the most refreshing, amazing thing in my life. And it didn't leave me with a headache. And it didn't leave me feeling dehydrated. Um, but, up until then, all those things, it's fine, it's normal. I could excuse it, right? I could I could convince myself that feeling dehydrated and nauseous, having, skin breakouts, having wrist, arthritis still flared up because I continued to drink coffee. That's fine. It's worth it because I want the coffee, because I could not imagine myself ever feeling like I could let it go. And yet, God bless me, because for whatever happened, I don't know why it worked, but drinking hot water took away my desire for any caffeinated beverage of any kind the rest of the day. Normally, I would have had about 4 cups of coffee, 3 regular, 1 decaf, and maybe a tea. One of the coffees would have been a cappuccino, and the rest would have been black coffee. But I was willing to accept gut rot, or what I call gut rot, upset stomach. I was willing to accept headaches. I was willing to accept all these awful things, feeling dehydrated, that aftertaste you get with coffee, with dry mouth, and it was affecting my teeth. I was willing to live with all of that just as excuses so I could keep drinking the coffee. It would be, I think, the way an addict would be like, yeah, well, that's all right. I'm willing to pay the money. I'm willing to lose my home or do whatever it takes for my next hit. Because when you're in addiction, that's how your brain works. Whether it's alcohol or drugs or nicotine, caffeine, in particular coffee, whether it's sugar or carbs. And some of them are a lot harder to quit. But I realized the more I was making excuses as to why it was okay to drink something that I knew was bad for so many medical reasons and health reasons. It kept my Raynaud's flared up. It affected my anxiety levels dramatically. It constantly had me in the bathroom. It was constantly, giving me headaches and feelings of nausea. And it was horrible. It's horrible for my IBS. My IBS would never settle as long as I kept drinking coffee, regardless of whether it had caffeine, full caffeine or less, because even decaf has a little bit, right? And none of that mattered because I wanted that dopamine hit from the caffeine. Similar to, I wanted that dopamine hit from the starches, the carbs, and the sugar. But I was able to get rid of that, which is so amazing. Because of my own willpower? Absolutely not. That was God. That was totally God helping me find a way to get rid of those things by doing other stuff, right? So how do I get rid of the carb cravings? Well, eating meat, adding extra salt, putting in butter, putting in the fat if it was leaner meats. Eating that is what helped me no longer desire the other stuff. And I'm not saying I was perfect, because I'm not. Like I said, I've talked in other videos. There was Christmas 2 years ago when my husband gave me for a Christmas gift a gluten-free sugar cookies, or not sugar cookies, sorry, shortbread cookies. And I thought, I'll just have one or two. People do that in this space. One or two, I'll be fine. Yeah, 16 or 18 of them later, not so much. Or I gave in and ate nuts, like a lot of nuts. If he had peanuts in the house, holy smokes, watch out because they would be gone. So we had to, for me, they could not be in the house because I would eat them in spite of my best intentions until I reached the point where all I craved was animal meats with salt and maybe some extra fat like butter. Mostly it was stuff like bacon, fatty beef, and egg yolks. Awesome. Or, excuse me, burgers with bacon, or occasionally a really nice sirloin steak if we were out somewhere, right? But eating lots and lots of meat and eggs. And one day I was blessed because God had taken away my desire for the crap because I had something better. And until I was willing, I think, until I was willing to say, maybe I should try to at least cut back on coffee, if not quit, because it's really not that great for me. And I know that. And it's something I'm holding on to for the wrong reasons. My gut health is not optimal. In fact, it's not great. It's healing, but it's not healed. And I'm never gonna be able to improve on further pain reduction if I cannot get the inflammation down. And the thing that's causing it now, the only thing that's causing it right now is the caffeine. And so maybe that's why I think, actually, you know what? I think that's what happened because I just happened to see that video about, Bart K talking about, well, he was drinking some hot water. It was the second or third day without coffee because he's doing the 90-day carnivore challenge, which is something done with the Steak and Butter Gang, which is run by Bella Ma, Steak and Butter Gal. Anyways, check out her channel too. She's got some great content. If that's something that you guys might be interested in, I don't know. So for me, I thought, well, I'm doing pretty well. Maybe I'll just drink some hot water because I know what it was. I went to have a cup of decaf and it tasted absolutely disgusting to me, like horrible. I'd noticed over the few days before that it would seem to be that the decaffeinated coffee was suddenly making me feel gassier, then like bloated when I hadn't noticed it before. I'm sure it was, but I was just ignoring it beforehand. And so I thought, oh, well, I'm really cold. Oh, well, maybe I should just drink some hot water. That'll warm me up from the inside out, right? And so I did. And it was amazing. Suddenly, I felt incredible. I don't know. I don't know if it was because the water was hot or it felt cleansing or what it was. It's nothing magical. It was just some tap water I put in the kettle and boiled. That's it. But I felt so much better, and I suddenly realized that I wanted more and more water, and made me realize, oh my goodness, I've been so dehydrated. No wonder I've been having headaches because coffee dehydrates you. And I was forcing myself to eat later or at times when I probably wasn't really hungry because I was relying on how I felt after coffee. And I realized even if I ate first and then had a cup of coffee, or I had coffee with my food, I felt way better than what I used to do, which was get up in the morning, spend some time with God in my Bible, and have a cup of coffee while I'm doing it. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. I'm going to chill out. I'm going to have a coffee with God, right? Nothing wrong with that. It's just for me, what I've realized is because I've been trying to heal my body so much that I think since I was having coffee first, it was delaying when I was actually hungry. It was throwing off everything. And at the end of the day, really, um, I wasn't truly hearing the hunger cues of my body like I should have been. So that's what's happened for me. That's where I'm at as of today. I feel like I've broken free from coffee because it tasted gross. Like I said, I had one earlier today. We were on our way to church, my husband and our son and I, and we stopped at Starbucks on the way to grab a coffee. And normally, Starbucks coffee, I love normally. But my first sip, I was like, oh, this is so gross. And I thought, maybe it's just me. I mean, I brushed my teeth at least an hour ago, but who knows? Let it sit for a few minutes. Took another sip. Nope. Oh, gross. No way. So I ended up only drinking it halfway. And it was awful. I'm like, what's wrong? Is it me? Is it the coffee? I thought maybe it's the coffee. Maybe there's something, maybe their water's weird. I don't know. I don't know, right? So this afternoon, when we got back from church and I went into town to get our groceries for the week, I went past Costa and I grabbed a cappuccino to go. And I love their coffee. I find it's never bitter. It's just nice, pleasant taste. Right. So I thought, great, smells delicious. I'm ready. On my way back from the shopping, heading home in my wheelchair with my coffee, and I had like two, maybe three sips, small sips, and I just thought, oh, this is so gross. It's one of those things where you keep thinking maybe it'll start to taste better soon. Maybe it'll get better. It didn't get better. I ended up pouring out 3/4 of it because it was disgusting to me. And then I realized, wait a minute, it's not a temptation right now. Now, I don't know what tomorrow's going to be like. I'm not going to borrow trouble from tomorrow. Today has enough of its own. But I feel like I can now face recovery for all my addictions, my caffeine, carbs, sugar, and my bulimia, the addiction to the binging and purging and restriction cycle. So for that, I'm glad because I don't know. It's almost as if because I still had the coffee as part of it, it wasn't allowing me to actually face all of the different things that I was addicted to, as if somehow that made me weak or something was wrong with me. But I know that a lot of us, especially if we really have addictions, if we are truly addicted to something, and we really cannot quit without extra support or help of some kind, we often have more than one addiction, sometimes multiple ones at once. Not always, I'm sure, but certainly in my case. So I hope you guys will keep me in your prayers, as I will keep praying, and I will keep leaning on God because it is not it is nothing to do with me. Because if I still thought it tasted good, I would still be drinking coffee. Absolutely. No question. Regardless of the health implications, because I've been doing it for the past 8 years without any regard to the health implications. So, I don't know. I don't know if this is of any help to you guys at all, but if you are trying to cut back or quit coffee, you may, you might. It sounds weird, but you know what? It worked. Having said that, eating meat and eggs and butter to mainstream society sounds weird, and we know it's not. So weird sometimes works wonders. But I think that's it for me tonight, guys. It's about 6:15 here in Colchester. it is time for me to go and get some meat in me for the evening, get myself ready for a good night's rest and tomorrow. But I hope you guys are keeping well. All of the best. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It means so much to me. I know that God has called me to share my story and my journey with others. Just whatever. If anything I share can be of any help to at least one person, then it's well worth it. Then I'm glad I said it. I'm glad I put it out there. But yeah, if coffee is something you are trying to get on top of, try some hot water. It may do the trick. Who knows? And I would say pray about it. Pray for help. I certainly had to. Whether that is someone you consider your higher power, whether it is the God of Jesus, it's all important. So I just want to wrap up and just say that, you know what? Here's where I'm at, guys. Take it for whatever it's worth, but I eat meat and I pray daily because that's what I need for recovery from the eating disorder and the binging, the purging, the anxiety, the depression, getting over my addictions with food and coffee. So it helps me. I hope it helps you. And if you are already a person of faith, keep going because it will get better. It will get better. Don't mean to sound condescending. I'm just saying if you are a person of faith, then you know already that having prayer and faith is a key, but so is eating animal meats and their associated fats for nourishment and nutrition. That's it for me, guys. Love you loads. See you guys either in the next live or in the next video. Bye for now.